what I thought I'd do with my paper is give you, I was going to say, 3 things, more or less. The first was give a bit of background about how I sort of came into constructive photography. Then talk a bit about my development through using this technique, which in my case led to me sort of ditching it for 20 years. And then sort of being in hiding as far as photography has been concerned, and then sort of re-emerging with a new body of work, which I'm very happy with, but was informed by what I was doing during that 20-year period, which is training as a psychiatrist and practicing as a child adolescent psychiatrist in London. So I'll try to put all those things together. So I think Ron's already made this point. You photograph things because they're real. This is the Beekeeper by Robert Avedon, and this has to be a photograph, because if it was a painting, the guy covered in bees wouldn't really have much effect, because it's a photograph, you know that someone was there covered in bees, and that's really sort of, wow, scary. Photography can be really beautiful, but also it's always flawed. Beauty in photography is always flawed, which I think is very important. Because here's Bert Howard, he's called This Perfect Moment. I don't know if you can see from the back. There's a group of soldiers. This is a shore in the Mediterranean. The group of soldiers of seamen over here being sort of pandered to by this guy. But in the background, you can't see from the depth, there's a little head poking up, which is out of place. You would not, if you were painting it, put that head there. And that tells you that this was sort of grabbed and you can't control everything. So, Cindy Sherman, big influence on me, exploring photography as a medium for things that are not authentic. So this is a self-portrait. They're all self-portraits, and there's a narrative here, there's a story, but what the hell is it? It's not a documentary, so what's going on? Sherman also manipulates the viewer. Usually it's a photographer that's manipulating things and presenting you with stuff, but here you are feeling manipulated. You are looking down on this vulnerable young woman, and that might not be your choice. You may not want to relate to her in that way, but you've got no choice because she's putting you in that position. A victim and looking down. So all these sort of techniques to control and manipulate the viewer. So I like this because it's, in a way, it's authentic because it's being, it's transparent about what's going on. Photography, other kind of lies that photography tells. This is Dwayne Michaels in 74 with the Egyptian pyramids in the background, putting a little pile of stones together and making something in photographic terms, which is the same height, in fact, taller, twice the size of the pyramids. And that tells you about how bizarre it is to see the world from one single point of view. That if you are in one position, looking at things from one angle, that's only your view, and it isn't really the big picture at all. Thought I'd do a little exploration of masks. Most of the pictures in here, in this room, are people wearing masks. There's a mask in that cabinet over there, so it's a two-dimensional photograph, which is held in front of somebody's head with polystyrene and specs and so on. So there's a little bit going on before. I'm vaguely aware of Meatyard. I read a bit about him. He stumbled on these masks in Woolworths, apparently, and bought a whole lot of them, and then went off and photographed mainly his family, so his children. So this must be one of his kids wearing a sort of scary mask as an old person. This one I think sort of speaks. You've got a little boy with an old face and a little sort of baby doll. So again, this is constructed. It's telling you, it was kind of important that it's a photograph, but it's not it's using the medium in a different way. This is a photograph by Etienne Carja, I'm not very good at French, of Arthur Rimbaud, he was a poet who lived in France in the 1870s. And he was a real tearaway, apparently. He was a sort of romantic hero. He was decadent, he was bisexual, he used alcohol and drugs to excess, and he was sort of held up as a flame. And that photograph was used by David Wojnarowicz.
Wojnarowicz.
Say again?
Wojnarowicz.
Wojnarowicz, thank you. Was that Polish? Is that a Polish name, then?
I don't know.
Anyway, so he was a similar kind of, he sort of modelled himself on Rimbaud. So he was apparently a very sort of rough life, and he was a very sort of extreme artist who made lots of political comments. He died of AIDS in 1992. And anyway, so he went around, he produced a series of pictures, which I wasn't aware of. I hadn't seen these before doing this, and I was, when they were pointed out to me. So this is the poet living in New York. What would have been like if Rimbaud had lived in New York? Apparently they were exhibited in 1990 for the first time, which is about the same time that this stuff was. So I've taken the mask, I've said in a different way. Moving into the next sort of little bit, I suppose. The pictures behind you are rates progress. Very spontaneous. I developed this technique of a mask. I tried different ways, because these people are, the truth here is that there's people whose identity is hidden behind these masks. So in a way, I'm not taking advantage of anybody. So people can take their clothes off, but be safe because they're behind the mask. And then just have fun with it. So it was a sort of lively, sort of exciting time, just sort of bashing off this whole series of pictures, which was based on a rate's progress by William Hogarth from the 1830s. Yeah. And I hope to show many like that they're actually behind you. But just to say, this is a shop which is 100 yards from here, where you can buy masks of anyone you like. Jimmy Savile was in the window. The first time I spotted the shop. When I went back, I thought I really must photograph that and include it in my talk, but he'd been removed by the time I came back. So obviously, it didn't have much sale value. So anyway, so the photographic mask is quite a common thing developed together, so to speak, and that's a much more modern. The other guys are bits about Dave Klein and beyond and so on. Anyway, so my day job, so just say what I've sort of been up to. Although I'm in an ivory tower, I'm also a community psychiatrist. This is an office where I worked for a while, working very closely with social services. This is a group of staff who work at the children's home. I've done a little Hockney number there. So I'll come along. So here's me with sort of 8 years of training, and here's these people who are pretty low paid, and they're looking after the most troubled kids. So it's all really rather sort of upside down. So my job is to not wear a suit and to try and sort of help them think about what the work they're doing for the benefit of these kids. And then it's really weird because like last week I was invited to with some others to the European Commission so to talk about experience of child protection work in the UK and compared it with all sorts of other countries. So a great job, because one minute you're in a council flat seeing a boy who's been kicked out of school, who's on the verge of being in foster care, and the next minute you're at the European Convention and so forth, totally upside down. So applying this, this is another sort of working through kind of thing. This isn't in the show, but just to say, working through moving to the suburbs is the series. This is a house very much like the one that I live in. And everybody when you move out to the inner city, everybody seems to be obsessed with BMWs and Mercedes. So, so there's a nice motorway with some BMW and Mercedes things. I always felt guilty about wanting to have a Mercedes or a BMW. So here's a little baby sort of acting out his fantasies. And then there's this sort of adolescent regret. And this was exhibited in London. Death, so cars. So we're working through. I just want to give us a short commentary on the pictures next door. So I think I did, with this period not producing much work, and we're very, very busy. So I think bringing back the techniques of constructive photography to myself, unashamedly exploring different identities. And I think when you get to a certain age, you start to sort of think about the past more. And everybody, genealogy is a big industry, isn't it? And it's mainly for people over 50, I think. Ancient Caledonian forest. Working through, this was me at a conference in Leicester. It was a bit over the top, really. It was 2 weeks of sitting in groups. So this is all based on Beyond. Talking about anything that comes into your mind, which is, so sitting in a group and you start to get really pissed off at everybody and you think there's a cute bunch of whatever. So the object there is to say that. And then you feel very guilty because actually, they're really very nice people and you should never have said it. So you say that too, and you can see it all go on for quite a while. But anyway, this is an international conference, and there were quite a few German people there. And this is the big issue of Jewish heritage in this group, where everybody's sort of saying anything that comes into the minds with a bunch of Germans. But they were amazing people. I was so impressed with them. And the war for them was really something that they were having to work through as well, just as much as because they didn't choose to have parents who signed up for the Nazi party or whatever. Anyway. So at this conference at the end, I said, because I was about 3/4 of the way through the series at this point, I said to this big group, I've decided, because I'd taken some pictures along, because the one that's round the corner, me with the baby, was taken at this conference. One of these people became a photographer for my images. I said I would like to take a picture called the German. I'm not sure what it's going to be like, but I want to take a picture called the German. Anyway, these are my these poor souls, German Jewish relatives who were killed in Auschwitz. That is the so I never thought I'd go to Auschwitz. Never ever thought I'd go to Auschwitz. But for the purpose of doing the project, my daughter and I were in Berlin. I thought we've really got to go to Auschwitz, so we went all across Poland, drove all across Poland to get to Auschwitz. That's the gas chambers that the Germans, the Nazis blew up just before they left. And that's the picture that I made. So in the background here is the very place where these poor people were killed in their millions. And in the First World War, this guy had been a soldier in the German army and been awarded the Cross. So that was something to that. So anyway, so on the subject of working through, this was actually quite instrumental. And then Nazi propaganda used to work out how big to make my nose with the Auschwitz in front. That's quite funny. Yeah, anyway, I won't go on and on. I've got a few reference things in here. So this is I'll show this last one, I think, the grandfather, the Irish grandfather I never knew because I was told he was an alcoholic and that was all that was to him. And this is my cousin, so I'm really jealous of her that she met my grandfather and I never did. And I discovered, I was horrified, he was alive till I was about 4, but I've never introduced to him because he was an alcoholic. So there we are. The Irishman. So I suppose what I hadn't realised when I did when I went round the gallery doing this talk is it's a bit weird having someone like me being so sort of open about my personal history and so on and so forth. So I wanted to sort of explain, I've had sort of years and years of it's kind of always been expected of me to do this. Anyway, wonderful Bellini, Mother and Child. Slightly less wonderful Mother and Child. That was the one that was done at the Leicester Conference. The Child, that's Robin's one. These are all next door, so. Oh yes, as Alex was pointing out, I didn't even realise this so this is the sort of the kind of romantic who's standing on a lonely promontory, thinking big thoughts. And here is Caspar Friedrich, romantic painter, 1809. Uncanny resemblance, even compositionally. This is what Alex's, they were called the sonnets, the sonnet series of all the lots round Scotland that the figure was inspired by. So things move in mysterious ways. I guess it shouldn't be that big a surprise. The unconscious is a powerful thing. So maybe you're aware of things you're not aware of, so to speak. Oh yeah, I thought I'd show this. This is around the corner, called The Husband, my wife's face. But just for record, there she is. in that pose. So that was one of the easiest montages to do because it was all photographed from the same distance. So all the grain and the lighting all sort of. She had to stand on a couple of bricks to sort of get the same. And said, "Are we finished yet?"
Almost.
So